Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. I'm joined by Lloyd De Jongh tonight, and we've got a great show lined up. It's going to be a controversial show, to say the very least, and we're going to be covering the controversy between Islam and Judaism and going into some of the primary citations on the topic that are hotly disputed and rather ignored in large part. I think most people are going to be rather upset by tonight's show. It doesn't matter what side of the paradigm you're on. I think most people have been told a certain point of view for about the last century, or maybe 130 years or so. And when we get into the citations, again, we find something that's very different than what we've been told, possibly even a bait and switch. And so we want to cover all of this information tonight and present a different view that nobody else, as far as I'm aware, has ever presented as far as the cold facts go. And so anyway, Lloyd, welcome back to the Logos Media UnSpun show.
Well, thank you, Young. Thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
And, well, hopefully we get some more people in here quickly. It looks like it's starting to go up. And so let's see. Where should we begin here? You've got a lot of notes here. Why don't we start off? You've got, I wanted to mention the Talmud also. And we're told that the Talmud is probably the most evil book in the world, and we're going to be covering more of the Talmud in another episode. But what we want to talk about tonight is essentially that Islam is built on a foundation of Judaism and some of the contradictions that are in the official history. So why don't we just kick it off and dive right into it?
Okay. Yeah, I've tried to simplify the topic to not cover too much, but keep it down to the central issues. Then with all the facts that I can reference, as we've done in the previous 5 videos, I will be talking about some of the historical narrative, and then of course providing all of the scriptural citations as I have before. Can I just mention some of the things? Just mention a couple of points regarding the previous 5 videos and some of my experiences.
Please do. And why don't you talk about some of the things that people have accused you of, so that we can get that out of the way right away.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it's some of it's really funny, some of it's really frustrating, but if you read through the YouTube comments based on the previous 5 videos, I think people will see that I am, at this point, if I have this correct, I'm a Jewish, Christian, Catholic, Muslim, jihadi, Zionist, Mossad agent. Okay, I think that was conclusive.
Well, are you sure you didn't miss a couple?
Monkey. We forgot that. So I think it's been conclusively proven in the YouTube comment section that I am all of those things.
As far as the audience is concerned, it's been proven, but not with any facts or information.
Yeah. And there were numerous things.
And somebody says, and CIA too. Yeah, I did see them accuse you of that.
I forgot that. You're right. So yeah, I am simultaneously all of those things. I'm a Christian, Muslim, Jew, jihadi, Mossad agent, CIA agent. Sure. As you can tell, I get a lot of paychecks from different sources.
Yeah, well, and of course you're joking, because someone will find a way to take that comment out of context. So be careful. They'll edit that right out there, and then use it to attack you. So
true. Lloyd admits to, yeah, I know, I get it. That would be. Also, since you alluded to the Talmud earlier, people said plenty of things about the Talmud in relation to Islam, and I asked them, please, can you give me your citations? Because I provided literally hundreds of citations. I provided the names of the authors, the names of the books. I gave the page numbers, I gave the chapter numbers, the verse numbers. I gave as much detail as I could. I provided links. My screen was visible to everyone. My citations were all public, and I actually want people to go and look at the citations to see for themselves. And when I asked people for citations on the Talmud, they would not to me. People
Oh, I just lost you for a second.
quite literally.
You just cut out for a second, so just back up a second there.
Okay. I know I provided hundreds of citations to the Islamic texts, whereas when I asked for people for citations on the Talmud, none of them would give them to me. They refused to provide me chapter and verse as I asked, which is what I did for Islam.
Now, let me just interject right there, and then you and I both actually spent some time looking up some of these Talmud citations ourselves, and we're not going to, I'm going to leave a cliffhanger right there for everybody. We're not going to cover that this week, but we're going to do a show on that either next week or the week after. And speaking of that, next week I'll be moving. I'm not sure if I'll be doing a show on Tuesday or not. I might try to squeeze one in somewhere, but so, there's going to be more coming to cover the Talmud and what we found there. And we're going to try to put it all in context for everybody so that people can see. And anyway, back to you.
Yeah. No, thank you. So I had comments that were literally, the Talmud has got to be the most evil book in existence. Right? That was one comment from one user on the site. I won't mention his name right now, but he was this is the same guy that told me that that President Obama was a Jew pretending to be a Muslim, pretending to be a Christian. Yeah, make of that what you will. And so he's covered all the bases. So all evidence, it's a catch-all. So basically,
the broad net, so that anything that comes out of it, he was right.
Correct. So if it is such an evil book, then I asked, please look, I've done a detailed job on Islam, on the Islamic scriptures. Please provide me the same references. Let's use the same standard of evidence for the Talmud. No one provided me that. One person did provide me a list of Islamic links, which I thought was like interesting. It's like, very unusual for someone who professes not to be a Muslim, but providing me with Islamic links to a discussion on the Talmud. But again, no details. So I would like that. And so we'll discuss that in the future. We'll take on some of these claims about it and go read through the Talmud itself, as we've done with Islam. Okay, so where shall we start? The discussion today is Islam versus the Jews. All right. And
I think I put in the title Islam versus the Jews, so maybe I got it wrong. Oh, well.
I think you did the Jew, yeah. Yeah.
You want me to, I can have that fixed later if you want.
Edit that later, yeah. Okay, so there's a couple of things that we will cover today. So one of these, we have to talk about the Islamic concept of the kafir. What's noteworthy is that I mentioned this in all the YouTube videos. I put up a comment to this about the kafir, and not once was there a response or comment about that. Because there's a constant discussion about the Jewish term goy or goyim, but
you're going there. Here it goes, folks.
But no one wanted to discuss the Islamic concept of the kafir. So the kafir is an Islamic term that is it means someone who conceals, right, the truth of Islam, someone who's not grateful for, or someone who conceals the truth of Islam. That's something we have to discuss. It is obviously, and it compares with what people say is the meaning of the term goyim. But that particular term we'll look into again in detail in the future. But we have to talk about the kafir. We have to talk about Islam and its concept of its ownership of Jerusalem. And we have to talk about the treatment of Jews under Islam, especially from the time of Muhammad, because we have to go back to Muhammad being the perfect example, and Muhammad's biography, the Quran and the Hadith, being the record of his treatment of the Jews. So we'll cover those three things tonight, and hopefully we'll learn a lot about how Islam views the Jews. So shall we start with sharing shall we start with the kafir?
Go ahead and share screen, sure.
Okay, share. So I'll share my main screen. Okay, I'm just going to move this over to my other screen. Okay, has my screen popped up?
Yep, you're good. I'm
Okay,
gonna just move us
so
somewhere where we're not blocking the view. Got us
yeah,
in the middle there.
I moved this to a completely different screen. So there's a lot of innuendo, there's a lot of imprecision, and
Oh, just lost you again. Goodness.
you will notice that.
Okay, you're back. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, yeah, the connection seems perfect where I am right now. Um,
I've got it
so the,
paused here, so it's not taking any extra on my side, but we'll just work through it. You're on the
right,
other side of the planet, so it's to be
and it's one
expected.
o'clock in the morning. Um,
Well, that should be good for your side because not too many people would be on.
yeah, so there's a great deal of imprecision and a great deal of innuendo in the discussion with Islam versus the Jews and Judaism, and I'm hoping that we can bring a little bit more precision to the subject. I'm hoping everyone can see my screen.
Yep.
So we have, okay, let's talk about the kafir. Okay, so I'll try and do a detailed introduction to what is a kafir. Now, the opening chapter of the Quran is called the Fatiha, the opening. And we have discussed this in the previous 5 videos, so I cannot rehash everything we've discussed in 8 hours of discussion prior to this. But it says that lead us not astray like the Christians or into anger like the Jews. That is the opening of the Quran, right? And it mentions the Jews and the Christians numerous times within the Quran. Now, Islam, we know that Islam is very different because Islam is heavily concerned with the non-Muslim, right? Now, if you look at, say, Buddhism, the Buddhist sutras are concerned with how to be a Buddhist. It doesn't concern itself with non-Buddhists. If you look at Christian doctrine, it tells you how to be a Christian. It doesn't talk about non-Christians, right? Islamic doctrine, though, concerns itself with the non-Muslim, right? Now, there are religious aspects in that it says that non-Muslims will go to hell, right? Fine, because we're not Muslims. However, the other part and the major part of the doctrine, though, is political. It talks about what will happen and what should happen and what should be done by Muslims to non-Muslims today in this life, right? Now, again, I try not to make religious discussions. I try not to go into depth on that, but I have to unfortunately reference a few things. Now, if you look at Jesus, he says, my kingdom is not of this world, it's in the next life, right? Islam is very much concerned about this world and this life. So non-Muslims in Islam are not treated neutrally. As we've discussed in the previous 5 episodes, the non-Muslim, under Sharia, it is legal to enslave him. Okay, we know that Muhammad tortured people. We discussed at length the rape of captured women, of non-Muslim women. We discussed that one at length. We know that they can be lied to, the non-Muslim, they can be deceived, and they can be plotted against, as we discussed that about the concept of makr and makara, that Allah is the greatest of deceivers, right? Now, these are not neutral terms. These are not religious terms. These are political actions, and these are harmful actions that can be conducted against the non-Muslim. Now, the Quran has a word for the non-Muslim, which is kafir, right? So the word kafir used to mean someone who's not grateful for, someone who conceals the truth of Islam. But as time went on, as the Quran changed, as the doctrine of Islam changed, as the message of Muhammad changed, the kafir became someone who can be destroyed in jihad. Right now, if we look at the doctrine of the kafir within Islam, 51% of the Quran, the Sira, and the Hadith talk about the kafir, talk about non-Muslims, how to deal with non-Muslims, what to do on a political, military, and social level with non-Muslims. That's 51% of the 3 major texts of Islam, the Quran, the Sira, and the Hadith. So this is political doctrine. So Islam uses a number of different words for non-Muslims, right? So we are called the people of the book. In other words, we've had a book that was given to us to teach us about religion. That would be Jews and Christians. There's a couple of others in there, but we won't talk about those now. So Islam uses the words pagans, polytheists. Christians are seen as polytheists. they don't see that we worship a single God who is a Trinity. They see we worship three gods. Those three, as we've discussed in the previous episodes, are Jesus, God, and the Mother Mary. Right? That's the Quranic view of the Trinity. It also talks about Jews, Christians, apostates, and infidels. Right? Infidel is not a sufficient translation of the term kafir. Infidel is almost a neutral term. A kafir is someone who is hated by Allah. Right? And therefore must be hated by the Muslims, because Muhammad hated them too. Anyone who does not submit to the Sharia has to suffer political consequences, which include violence, betrayal, death, torture, execution, and assassination. We know that Muhammad assassinated numerous people. I gave several examples of men and women and children who were killed by Muhammad just for making fun of him, for writing poems about him or singing songs about him that made fun of him. These are all political deeds. Right? These were at the time that Muhammad was a political and military leader. So now Islam likes to tell us that people of the book, the Jews and the Christians, are brothers in the family of Abraham. This is not a claim that Christianity makes in its books or Judaism. It's a claim that Islam makes, right? It's a claim that it forces on everyone else. So Jews that were executed and others who were executed in jihad by Muhammad and his followers might have heard those words that we're all brothers in the family of Abraham, but they didn't feel the love. They felt the sword slicing through their necks. Okay, they were executed like pagans. They were executed like any other unbelievers. Now, there are different classes of kafirs. We have the atheist, the polytheist, the deist, idolaters, and Jews who believe in revelation but do not believe in Muhammad's revelation. I'll pause there for a moment. Any comments or thoughts from you? Yeah, everything's clear?
Yep.
If you have any comments or thoughts, do let me know. So ultimately, everyone who is a kafir, who does not believe in the Shahada, there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. Some say prophet, but the correct translation is the word messenger. Right? So the Shahada is there's no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. So under Islam, all other religions must submit and they must run their lives according to Sharia, because Islam is supremacist. Okay, it must be superior above all religions. And the kafir then becomes a political underclass, because Muslims are the best of peoples and the Christians and the Jews are the worst of beasts. That's a quote from the Quran. Again, these are quotes that these are details that I've covered in previous videos. So for me to go back to every single thing I've said prior would take too long. So, okay, now the Buddhists, for instance, the Buddhists suffered, right? Afghanistan, people aren't aware, but Afghanistan was a Buddhist country. It had the largest Buddhist statues in the world that were all destroyed. The Buddhists were slaughtered in huge numbers, and we don't even know about this history. And they were slaughtered by Muslims who invaded. Kabul was captured and converted in the early 800s, for instance, right? And they suffered alone. No one helped them, right? The Hindus, they suffered horribly. We know at least 80 million, if not many, many times that, were killed by Islamic invaders when Islam invaded India. We know at least 1/3 of India's population were killed and enslaved under Islam, right? Again, they suffered alone. We don't discuss that. The trauma is so terrible. This is never discussed. It's known history, but it's never discussed. So we discussed previously the suffering of the Africans under jihad involved in the Islamic slave trade. We did an entire episode on the Islamic slave trade, the largest, most prolific slave trade, 200 times larger than the Atlantic slave trade by Europeans, 200 times larger, and we don't discuss this. Christians, okay, so Asia Minor, what we call Turkey today, North Africa, all of North Africa, and all of Eastern Europe all suffered. They were all Christian, and now they all suffered the same fate. They were invaded, people were slaughtered, enslaved, and they suffered alone. No one came to their aid because Muhammad had a rule, divide and conquer. This was his example. This is simply Muslims following the example of Muhammad. This is what he did in his very first battles, which was battles essentially against the pagans in Arabia and the Jews. So if you're an atheist or not, you're going to suffer the same political consequences, or you should, by those who follow the example of Muhammad, those who are running the Islamic ummah is run by the ulama, and those who make those decisions. So we have the N word in English, but in Islam, we have the K word, and that is the kafir, a word that we need to understand. Now, people talk about the goyim, great. People have all sorts of things to say. Fine. I have asked for references. I have not received a single one. I would like those. And I've provided hundreds of citations, and we're going to be giving some more today on Islam. So, that comes from the Quran, comes from the Hadith, comes from the Sira. The example of Muhammad comes from Sharia law. And these are things that you can reference right now. So we discussed the women in Sharia. Okay. Now we know that the Quran says that, and I will give examples, that the kafir may be deceived, plotted against, hated, enslaved, mocked, tortured, and worse. Okay. The kafir is normally translated as unbeliever, but this translation is wrong. Okay. The word unbeliever is logical and emotional. It's neutral, logically and emotionally. The kafir is an abusive term. It is a prejudiced term, and it is a hateful term, because the kafir is hated by Allah. The kafir was hated by Muhammad, right? And thus, while this obviously would not, therefore, anyone who then follows Islam to the letter, which would be your Salafis, people who are really into the Islamic scriptures, would then feel the same way. Again, we've covered examples of those in previous discussions. Okay, so so Islam devotes a lot of energy to the kafir. The majority, 64% of the Quran is devoted to the kafir. That is a lot for a book about being a Muslim to be mostly about non-Muslims. Is very interesting that it doesn't focus on how you get to heaven, but on what you're supposed to do to people who are not Muslims. Okay, 81% of the Sira, this is Muhammad's official biography, okay, is about Muhammad's military struggles and political struggles against them. In other words, he had to undermine them, he had to kill them, he had to fight with them, he had to enslave them. 81% of his biography deals with the kafir. The Hadith devotes 32% of its text to the kafir. So 60% of the content of the major Islamic scriptures is all about non-Muslims. That's you and me and all your friends who are not Muslims. So the Hadith 37%, the Sira 81%, the Quran 64%, a total of 60% of the text of Islam, the three major texts of Islam, is devoted strictly to the kafir. The Sharia does not provide that, because Sharia law is primarily about Muslims, but we do have the status of the dhimmi. We did an episode where we discussed the matter of the dhimmi. The dhimmi is a semi-slave who pays tribute, as someone who is humiliated, who must be humiliated under Sharia law, and who must be dominated by the Muslims. And we discussed some of the implications of that in a previous episode. So religious Islam is what Muslims do to go to paradise and to avoid hell. So what Muhammad did to the Kafirs was not religious, but political. Okay, political Islam then is what is of concern to us, right, as non-Muslims. So a couple of things about the Kafir. Okay, there's a concept called al-wala wa al-bara, okay, which is to be harsh, it's essentially, that translates as loyalty and enmity. To be loyal to the Muslims and to have hatred in your heart towards non-Muslims. Okay, it is to be harsh against them, it is to detest them, and accepting the destiny of Allah the Most High insofar as it is the decree of Allah. Okay, so hatred for the sake of Allah and love for the sake of Allah is called al-wala wa al-bara, right? It's a fundamental principle of Islamic ethics. We discussed that Christian ethics is different to Islamic ethics. Islamic ethics is anything Muhammad did. Muhammad had sex with a child, therefore it is legal and lawful and moral in Islam. Muhammad had people assassinated. Muhammad did lots of things, had slaves, he owned slaves, he sold slaves, he traded slaves, he beat slaves. So all of these things are therefore legal and permissible because he's the perfect Muslim, he's the perfect example, right? So Allah hates the kafir, therefore Muslims are, in theory, to act accordingly. Now that doesn't mean Muslims will, but we are saying this is in the Islamic doctrine. It is in the text. So Quran 40:3-5, the kafirs who dispute the signs or the Quranic verses of Allah without authority, having reached them, are greatly hated by Allah and by the believers. So Allah seals up every arrogant, disdainful heart. Now, it's not to say that every Muslim is going to even knows that this verse exists, but that is the perfect literal word of Allah. Okay, it is not permissible to give charity or zakat, one of the 5 pillars of Islam, to a kafir. Okay, this is in the Sharia. Charity may not be given to non-Muslims. Okay, zakat may not be given.
Wow, I didn't know that at all.
Yeah, no, I actually covered that in a previous episode. But yeah, that's in the Sharia. charity may not be given to non-Muslims. Now, they may do so for political reasons, but I mean, that's simply a matter of, that's, shall we say, a strategic aim, but it's not allowed. Okay, so a few Quranic references. The kafir can be mocked. 83:34. On that day, the faithful will mock the kafirs while they sit on bridal couches and watch them. Okay, should not the kafirs be paid back for what they did? And what did we do? Well, we didn't believe in Allah. A kafir can be beheaded. 47:4. When you encounter the kafirs on the battlefields, cut off their heads until you have thoroughly defeated them, and then take them prisoners and tie them up firmly. Okay, when you say prisoners, that can also be slaves, right? As we discussed in our section on Islamic slavery. Kafirs can be plotted against. They plot and scheme against you, Muhammad. Now, we know that the literal translation of that word is makr, which is deceive and deceiver, right? They scheme and plot against you, or they try to deceive against you, Muhammad, and I deceive them. This is the words of Allah. Therefore, deal calmly with the kafirs and leave them alone for a while. A kafir can be terrorized. Your Lord has spoken to his angels. I'll be with you. Give strength to the believers. I will send terror into the hearts of the kafirs, cut off their heads and even the tips of their fingers. We know that this comes more than once. Actually, this whole thing about cut off the tips of their fingers, that comes more than once. And that is that 533, actually, that Quran 533 discusses that as well, not just 812. And that is the basis for the Hudud laws in Islam, which is the Hudud punishments. A Muslim is not the friend of the kafir. So Quran 3:28, believers should not take kafirs as friends in preference to other believers. Those who do this will have none of Allah's protection and will only have themselves as gods. Allah warns you to fear him, for all will return to him. It also says that if you are their friend, you are one of them. Right? It also says in other verses that if a Muslim is a friend of the kafir, he is one of them. Therefore, he loses the protection of Islam and of Allah. The kafir is evil, 23:97, and say, oh my Lord, I seek refuge with you from the suggestions of the evil ones, the kafirs, and I seek refuge with you, my Lord, from their presence. We are the evil ones. We are the ones that are trying to seduce Muslims away from the word of Allah, from the perfect word of Allah. We are the ones that are trying to turn them to our evil ways. We are the ones that are trying to offer a corrupt gospel to the Muslims. The kafir is disgraced, 37:18. Tell them, yes, and you kafirs will be disgraced. And a kafir is cursed, 33:60. They will be cursed, and wherever they are found, they'll be seized and murdered. It was Allah's same practice with those who came before them, and you'll find no change in Allah's ways. I'll stop there for a second. Now, the Old Testament, people talk about, well, what about Leviticus? Well, first of all, that's not Christianity. That is the Old Testament. Jesus came a few days after that was written, right? Let's put it that way. So Christianity is found in the New Testament, in the Gospels, and Christianity is found in the example of Jesus Christ. The Old Testament is an example of the old, shall we say, of the more Jewish version of portion of the Bible. And while Christians do use that example to learn from, most of that is historical. It is descriptive. It is unlike the Quran, which is commandments that are prescriptive, right? So, any comments from you, Jan? Before I go on and finish the section, I'm nearly done. That's the last here.
No, go ahead.
So, kafirs and the people of the book. So, Muslims tell Christians and Jews that they are special. They are people of the book. We are brothers. Okay. However, in Islam, you are a Christian if and only if you believe that Christ was a man who was a prophet of Allah, not the son of God, just a prophet like any other prophet, just a man, right? We discussed that Muhammad's wife had an uncle who married them. He was an Ebionite priest, a heretical priest, and he belonged to a sect that believed that Jesus was just a man and nothing more. That is why in Islam, Jesus is nothing more than a man, because he took on that belief. You're also a Christian under Islamic rules that if you believe that there is no Trinity. Also, if you believe that Jesus was not crucified, that Jesus was not resurrected, that Jesus will return to establish Sharia law and abolish Christianity. And to be a true Jew under Islam, you must believe that Muhammad is the last in the line of Jewish prophets.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Now, the Jews obviously said that the line of prophets had ended, and therefore they did not accept Muhammad as a prophet. So now, 577, Quran 577. Oh, people of the book, do not step out of the bounds of truth in your religion, and do not follow the desires of those who have gone wrong and led many astray. They have gone astray from the even way. So Islamic doctrine is dualistic. There's always a verse that will contradict that verse. There are two verses that will contradict each other. Remember, whatever situation is required, you can always use one of them, depending where you find yourself. But ultimately, theologically, the stronger verse is the one that was written most recently, because that is the doctrine of abrogation. Right? That's how that works, as we discussed again in a previous episode in detail. Okay, so a later verse nullifies an earlier verse, and that's the final word. So it calls for Muslims to warn the people of the book who do not believe in the religion of truth, which is Islam. I discussed jihad at length.
Halal, as well as halal. It's not about the truth. It's about what Muhammad declares truth.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. Right. So remember 929. Okay. Fight those who have received the scriptures, the Jews and the Christians, but do not believe in Allah or in the last day. That do not forbid what Allah and His Messenger have forbidden. The Christians and the Jews do not follow the religion of truth until they submit and pay the tribute, the jizya, and are humiliated. Okay.
Let me ask you a question. When we read the English translation of the Quran, how much of this, is there any idea, statistically speaking, how much has been altered to reflect the watered down version compared to if you read, Arabic?
The actual Arabic, yeah, in fact, a lot of it, like the word deceive, has been changed to plot or scheme or plan. Allah is a planner, Allah is a schemer, when the Arabic word is a deceiver. And in Christianity, in Christian theology, Satan is the deceiver, the father of lies.
Right.
Whereas we know that Muhammad allowed lies. In fact, Muhammad told lies, and in fact, even Allah lied.
And we'll go into it in a bit that even his wife called him out for that.
Correct. So, I mean, I've covered every statement that I've made here. I have covered in previous episodes. I've provided all the links, all the references to the major Islamic texts. Now, yes, all of these translations, and earlier you noticed, previously I showed you, I typically use a site where there are 16 different translations of the Quran, right? That said, sometimes you can find that all of these English translations have been, shall we say, improved to make them a little bit more palatable. That they aren't necessarily always a literal translation of what's in the Arabic, because the Arabic is often much worse than what it says in the English. So yes, even in the Sharia, even in the manual that I utilize, which is the most common, most popular Sharia manual in the world, the Reliance of the Traveler, the Umdat al-Salik, even in that one, for instance, there's one verse which talks about female genital mutilation. It talks about circumcision for women. In the English version of that book, it comes with both English and Arabic on the page. In the English translation version, it shows that you can remove the prepuce, which is the front part of the woman's clitoris. But if you read the Arabic, it says the entire clitoris must be removed. So yes, that there has been alteration, and there certainly is a conflict between the English and the Arabic versions. Does that answer your question?
Oh, well, I was just talking about more of specifically a specific number with, 10, 20, 30%, how much has been changed, especially with what is translated into other languages like English. Like my Quran has, it's transliterated in English and Arabic side by side, but of course, it would take me weeks to figure out how to...
I can't give you an exact number, but...
Yeah.
No, I can't. But certainly you have to be very careful with these translations. You need to check and double check. One rule that I use is you go to Quran 4:34, which is the verse of beating women, right? And have a look and see how that verse is translated. Because if you look at the word for beat that is used in the Quran, that word is used in other verses as well. And it very clearly in those verses, in that context, it means to kick the crap out of people, basically, right? Whereas, so it's the same word that's used in 4:34 to beat women. Now, if you go to the Quran and it says to beat them lightly or tap them with a toothbrush or some nonsense of that nature, then you know it's been edited to make it nicer, to take away the literal Arabic translation. Okay, so notice Quran 1:7 I mentioned. Okay, and lead us not astray. Now, remember, 17 times a day, a faithful Muslim is going to say these words: lead us not astray. Do not lead us in the path of those who anger you, the Jews, nor the path of those who go astray, the Christians.
Now, I
That is
wanted to ask you about that because that's on the very first page of the Quran.
that's in the opening chapter of the
Right.
Quran. Yeah, that's
Now,
the opening verse. Yeah.
now mine doesn't say the Jews or the Christians there.
Because okay, so remember we covered this once before. So this is in the Yusuf Ali translation, right? In Muhsin Khan, sorry, in the Muhsin Khan translation, it literally says Jews and Christians. If you go to the tafsir, the exegesis, right? Tafsir literally means interpretation of that verse.
And what they make that, look like when you read it in a English translation is that they're speaking of the right-hand path because, it's those, not of those who anger you or not of those who go astray, yada, yada, but mine is worded a little bit differently there. But it makes it sound like the book is actually right-hand path and not...
If you go into the tafsir now, we discussed that before. I don't have those notes right in front of me, but we've discussed it before, and they specifically refer to the Jews and the Christians.
Right, interesting. Now, and I always find it interesting that the Quran is bound on the right hand, It's like, because Christianity, it's bound on the left hand, and in Christianity, you place your left hand on the Bible, you raise your hand, you swear to God because it's a book about the right-hand path. But
okay,
the Quran, the right hand of the Quran is bound.
Right. Yeah. So that means the opposite. So look, make of that what you will. Right. So that covers my discussion of the kafir. Now remember, last point on this thing. Sorry, on what the meaning of the kafir. That now this is not an exhaustive, it's not a thorough discussion, but I wanted to give a simple introduction to this is the concept of the kafir. Okay. For further reference, go through the previous videos. Now remember, they always say that we believe in the same God, we worship the same God. Well, sure, as long as you don't believe that Christ was divine, because that's blasphemy and you'll be killed for it under Sharia. As long as you believe there's no Trinity, as long as you believe Christ wasn't crucified, as long as you believe Christ was not resurrected, as long as you believe that Jesus will come back and destroy the cross at the right hand of Muhammad. So when people say to me, we believe in the same God, then you say, I didn't know that Muslims also believe that that God is a Trinity and that Jesus died on the cross and was resurrected. And say that when they tell you that you believe in the same God, and see if they agree with that. Because if we believe in the same God, then we believe the same things. And
this is, got to be one of the largest, deceptions ever that this is even an Abrahamic religion when you get in and you look at this because, and I've looked into some of the Talmudic texts that we'll be discussing, in another episode. But even there, it discusses that God is truth, not what Muhammad dictates as truth. And, so how could this be construed as being an Abrahamic religion? It's totally the antithesis,
Correct. Well, don't forget the prophets received revelation on the mountaintops. Muhammad received his revelation while in a cave.
Well, and let's go into that point, or do you have that in note later on?
No, I haven't done because that's more a religious thing.
Yeah,
but I will mention some basic facts.
Yeah, let's just mention that for a minute because we have like Mithraism and this stuff, which of course ties over to Zoroastrianism, but they would worship in underground caves and caverns and stuff, not receiving God's message or the message of Logos, truth, etc. But, underground, underground, get it? What's something that's underground? It's a deception. It's hidden. It's occulted. Yeah. And, so we have, and Muhammad says that he received his message from who? Gabriel?
So if you look at the line of the Jewish prophets, right, all of this is relevant because I need to build a foundation. All of these prophets received direct revelation from God himself, whereas Muhammad claims that the angel Gabriel interceded on God's behalf and gave him a revelation, which is again a break from the Christian and Jewish tradition.
Oh, good grief. All right. So, some people are getting nauseous in the
what are they saying?
Group. So Natty says, such a mix of emotions when I've been watching this series, mostly a medley of shock, nauseous disgust and anger, And I think even, for the Islamists who've been willing to stick it through this series and actually watch, I think, some of them have had the same reaction. And I wish, some of them like Ahmed and Bosnia and some of the others were in the chat tonight. I don't see them. We've had, a few apostates in the chat before, and I wish they were, all joined up tonight and watching, because they give a lot of feedback for having been insiders of this stuff as well.
Yeah, not true. Pity, but yeah, let's hope they will comment later. Okay, so Islam is built on a foundation of Judaism originally, but not in the way that people really think. Because I have been told in the YouTube comments, for instance, that Islam was founded in the 15th century, the 7th century, the 3rd century, the 1st century, the 5th century, the 9th century, the 12th century, the 14th century, the 18th century, the 17th century. It was founded by Napoleon, it was founded by the Illuminati, it was founded by the Rothschilds, it was founded by the Jews, it was founded by the Christians church, it was founded by the Catholics, it was founded by the Jesuits, it was founded by the Protestants, it was founded by the popes. Dude, yes, every single one of those utterly contradictory assertions is true. Everyone happy? Okay, so
just be careful again making statements like that, because they'll think you're serious and not be.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's just that. Look, I mean, honestly,
sarcastic facetiousness.
So I mean, look. Okay, sorry. A bank was robbed, and the suspect was a Scandinavian, Aboriginal, Eskimo, American Indian, Hindu, Jewish, African, Caucasian, white male between 1 and 2 meters tall.
Well, you covered everything at least. So
exactly. So look,
nothing missed. So no matter what conclusion comes out, they got it right.
Exactly. I mean, it makes no sense. Let's just stick with the scriptures. These are the documents we have. This is what people believe. This is how it's been for 1,000 years and more. So I'll just go with this right now. And look, whatever it might have been, could have been, should have been, this is what it is today, right? So Muhammad used the Jews as the basis for being a prophet, right? The Jews then who rejected him, once they learned what he was saying and they said, look, sorry, man, we don't buy your nonsense, they then became an example of what happens to people who resist Muhammad and resist the political will of Islam. So the Jews were assassinated, they were robbed, they were executed, they were raped, they were enslaved, they were kidnapped. They became the very first dhimmis, sometimes called dhimmi or zimmi, which is a semi-slave, and also they were exiled. And we'll go into some detail on all of this later as we go through. So note, Muhammad had people assassinated for writing poetry or songs that made fun of him. I gave examples in previous talks about men and women, children that said poems that made fun of Muhammad or wrote songs that made fun of Muhammad, and he had them murdered. He had them assassinated by his followers. He gave them permission to lie and to deceive to do so. But notice, volume 5, book 59, number 4, hadith number 449 of Bukhari, the Prophet said to Hassan, abuse them with your poems and Gabriel is with you. I just thought I should say that because, man, that just looks like what? Excuse me? So this is when he has besieged a group of Jews and he's about to kill them. But he says, while you have them besieged, abuse them with your poems. Fine, I'd rather have that than bullets. So that's great. Go ahead with the poetry. So modern Jewish hatred, comes directly from Muhammad. The Jews are important in the formation of Islam because he stole, he borrowed, he copied Jewish texts, Gnostic, heretical Christian texts, and others from the Sabians, from the Zoroastrians and others, but mainly Jewish and Christian texts. Right? He borrowed those. So one could, in theory, say if there were no Jews, there'd be no Islam, because he wouldn't have a foundational doctrine to build his Islamic doctrine on top of. Okay, so Muhammad had his first vision, which no one saw, and then he heard voices, and he said the voice was of the angel Gabriel. Oops, let me take that away. Okay, so Gabriel is in the Jewish tradition. So that's now Muhammad was a merchant. When he was younger, as a child, he traveled with his uncle all over Arabia, and he went to various places, and obviously he was told these stories, right, about different religions as he learned as he grew up. Now, from the beginning, Muhammad said his authenticity rested on the fact that he had the same basis, was in the same line as the prophets of the Old Testament. Now, in Mecca, where he grew up, there were no Jews. So when he was making up stories about, what the Jews believed and what the Christians believed, there were no Christians and Jews to contradict him. However, later in the second part of the Quran, the Medinan Quran, half of the city of Medina were Jewish. And then when they heard him talk about Judaism and Christianity, they were like, well, at least Judaism, they were like, sorry, Muhammad, that's not in our Bible. That's not in our books. He was like, you guys are wrong. And he killed them for it. So there were no Jews in Mecca when he started telling his stories of Noah and Adam and Moses, right? The characters are the same, but the stories are different. In the Jewish scripture, for instance, the story of Moses and the Pharaoh is about the release of Jewish slaves, right? In the Quran, the story of Moses and the Pharaoh is about the fact that Pharaoh would not admit that Moses was a prophet of Islam. Okay, so the Egyptians were destroyed because they wouldn't accept. They would have. Okay, so they wouldn't admit that Moses was a prophet of Islam. They wouldn't accept Islam, and so the Egyptians were destroyed. Now, in both versions, yes, the Egyptians were destroyed, but for different reasons. So Allah destroyed the earth with water because men would not believe that Moses was a prophet of Allah. Jesus was a prophet of Allah, came to bring Islam. Abraham was a prophet of Allah, came to bring Islam, but people would not believe them, or these guys didn't like the will of Allah, so they changed it and they made up their own stories, made up their own religions. And eventually, after 600 prophets all got it wrong, God finally chose Muhammad and said, Muhammad, here's my message, here's my revelation. And Muhammad was the one guy who finally said, okay, I will faithfully convey your message to the world. Okay, it makes sense so far? Yeah?
Oh, yeah. You take Logos completely out of context and then make a guy who is essentially a psychopathic murderer and who rubbed himself on infants and murdered women and got slaves, you make him the official prophet. Got it. Yeah, that's what God wanted. That sounds, again, like an inversion.
Look, man, when I read through the Islamic texts, I can't tell you how angry I get. It's incredible. I just can't explain how I can't be reading this. This can't be real. This could never have been written. I'm shocked when I read it.
Well, and I think a lot of the audience is just as shocked and appalled too as we're going through this stuff,
Well, look, you know what? I'm happy to spread the misery. I will give you the links you want.
Happy to spread the misery. Hopefully, at least I hope we wake up a few people. I mean, the issue is this series needs to go viral. Maybe what we need to do is go through and edit the most mind-blowing bits and put it together into one, 20-minute video that we can make go viral. What
about doing like 1-minute clips like Q&A?
Yeah, we had a video that that Matt, who's in the chat right now, we had a video that we posted late last week go viral this week, and
nice, congrats.
And so maybe we need to do something like that. Maybe people in the audience can help so that we can get this out. Anyway, I'll shut up and let you go on.
Sure, no, that's fine. That sounds good. So all of the stories in the Quran, all the stories we know from the Bible have changed to advance the Quran's argument that everyone has to listen to and do exactly as Muhammad says. So the message of the Quran is that the entire world is divided into those who believe Muhammad and those who do not. Okay, so if there had been Jews in Mecca, they would have said, hold on, that's not the way the story happened. That's not in the books. Okay, but the Quran says that the stories in the Old Testament have been corrupted. Okay, Adam, Noah, Moses, David, Solomon all prophesied that one day Muhammad would come. But the claim by the Quran is that the Jews destroyed all of these prophecies. And they concealed the message that Allah's prophet Muhammad was coming. And the real Jewish scriptures are found in the Quran according to the Quran. So, okay, any questions or comments so far?
Oh, Kat in the chat says, somehow this shocks me more than the Talmud. I was so innocent and trusting. And, we're going to go into more of this in the next episode, into the topic of the Talmud. So just hold your horses, and there's going to be more, but I don't want to give it away yet.
Yeah. So Islamic Jewish hatred today. So at first, the Jews were seen favorably in the Quran of Mecca until they reject Muhammad when he gets to Medina. So now today, as we have large influx of Muslims into Europe, we're seeing lots and lots of reports of violence against Jews. Okay, and people are saying, well, that's because of remnants of Nazism. But so let me mention a few things. A former Turkish prime minister, in front of crowds, publicly proclaimed that the Jews are bacteria and like a disease. I have all the references. I can bring those up and show you where those are. Oh, fuck, they're right here. Here we go. Okay, just so that people know I didn't just make that shit up. Sorry, I didn't say that, did I? Oops.
Yeah, twice. Oh,
Oops.
goodness.
Sorry, man. This makes me angry. So
yeah.
okay.
So anybody under 12 years old or whatever, excuse the language there for a moment.
I get angry when I read this. So remember, this applies to Christians, applies to Jews, applies to atheists, applies to you're not exempt. If you're not a Muslim, you're not exempt. So in the Islamic world, there's a large amount of Jewish hatred that is on TV. If you go through YouTube and look at stuff on Palestinian TV, look at stuff on Pakistani TV, you'd be shocked at the kinds of things that are said on TV in public. Egyptian cleric Abdallah Samak, the Jews who slayed the prophets, are known for their merciless, murderous, and bloodthirsty nature. American Center for Islamic Research, President Salah Sultan, Jews murder non-Jews and use their blood for Passover matzos. Egyptian Islamic researcher Abdel Khalik al-Sharif, the Jews are the most vile amongst the creatures of Allah. So are Christians, that says in the Quran too. Egyptian cleric Hussam Fawzi Jabbar, Hitler was right to do what he did to the Jews. So now this is a contrast to Muhammad in Mecca. Okay, in Mecca he claimed that basically we were brothers to the Jews, we were brothers to the Christians as Muslims, right? But he said that he was the last of the line of the Jewish prophets. But now let's go back to long before Europe existed. Let's go back to medieval times again. In Spain, now they always talk about the golden age of Spain. So in Spain, in the early 11th century, Ibn Hazm said, the Jews are the filthiest and vilest of peoples. Their unbelief is horrid, their ignorance abominable. This is a small selection of what's out there. Oh my gosh. In Turkey, 1836, it is impossible to express the contemptuous hatred in which the Turks hold the Jewish people. In Iran, Jews were forced to convert to Islam in the 16th century. As the quote goes, they were drawn from their quarters on Friday evening into the hills around the city, and after torture, 350 Jews are said to have been forced to convert to Islam, which is proof that there's no compulsion in religion. Excuse my sarcasm. The synagogues were closed, and the Jews were then taken to the mosque where they had to proclaim publicly the Shahada, right, which I showed earlier, that there's only Allah and Muhammad is his prophet, or his messenger. And Mullah then instructed the newly converted Muslims into the Quran. Okay, these Jews that were forced to become, these newly converted Muslims had to break with their Jewish past, and they were forced to allow their daughters to be married to Muslims. In medieval Iran, a Jew was forbidden to go out into the rain since the water might fall off him onto the ground and a Muslim might step in it and become contaminated by the filth of the Jews. When it rained, Jews were not allowed in the marketplace in case they contaminate the food and the people. Okay? So,
it says fall on the ground and a Muslim might step in it and be contaminated. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
just that I have the references to all of this stuff. So I mean, if you want those, I can certainly give those afterwards. I just okay. So classical Jewish hatred. So all of these stories are before there were any modern European states, right? So we have to look elsewhere for the attitudes of the Jewish hatred by the Muslims. Now, there are effectively two Qurans. There's the early Quranic phase and the late Quranic phase, the Meccan and the Medinan Qurans, right? The Quran written in Medina has a very different picture of the Jews. Okay, so there were a lot of Jews in Medina. There were 3 tribes, and they were comprised about just over half the population in Medina. When Muhammad entered Medina, remember, he left Mecca because he was causing trouble, and they chased him out. Because I provided all the references in the previous episode. Muhammad was a troublemaker. Those are the words in Muhammad's own in the Islamic books. Muhammad is a troublemaker, and they chased him away. Okay, he then goes to Medina, where he then becomes a political authority, right? So it didn't take long for the Jews to inform Muhammad he was not a prophet in their lineage. but no one was allowed to contradict Muhammad. He killed people who contradicted him. So it didn't take long. So after a year, he became politically powerful, and he attacked one of the Jewish tribes. So basically, he attacked the weakest of the Jewish tribes, right? What he did was they were the least popular tribe. They were the weakest, the smallest. And the other two tribes of Jews were like, okay, whatever. We didn't like those guys anyway, and there's more for us if those guys aren't there. So he beat them. He took all of their money and he exiled them from Medina. I'll go into some more detail on some of this later as we go. Then he found an excuse to attack the second Jewish tribe. Now, you will be told by Muslims, well, they made war. They did. Look, fine. Go read your own books. Show me the evidence. Show me the quote. Show me the passage where these guys did whatever it was they did, please. And give me the references.
And just for those who might ask, why don't you show the references to that really quickly, if you don't mind?
I don't have them. Okay, look, I will see on the right-hand side here, for instance. See on the right-hand side here?
Yep.
Okay, this is the third tribe. Now, this is from the Sirat Rasulullah. This is from the official biography of Muhammad. This is the third tribe, and I was getting to those. The apostle besieged them for 25 nights until with the sword pressed, and Allah cast terror into their hearts. Okay, so then he says to them, because people keep telling me, Baqarah 256 says that's the Quran. There is no compulsion in religion. Okay, that's Quran 2:256. I offer you three alternatives. O Jews, you can see what has happened here. I offer you three alternatives. Take which you please. We will follow this man and accept him as true, for by God it has become plain to you that he is a prophet who has been sent, and that it is he that you find mentioned in your scripture. And if you do, then your lives, your property, your women, and your children will be saved. And of course, they said, we will never abandon the laws of the Torah and never change it for another. And they said, look, in fact, the Jews are said here to tell themselves, look, rather we kill our own wives and children, and then we send our men to fight against Muhammad and his companions, okay? Or we can ask for his forgiveness, or we can ask for his mercy. So the apostle answered, I give judgment that the men should be killed, the property divided, and the women and children taken as captives. The children were adopted into Islamic homes, raised as Muslims, and the women were sold into slavery or forced into marriage with Muslims. Okay, that's of the third tribe.
And the men were killed.
The men were, well, when we say men, all children who were 12, who started to show signs of pubic hair, were killed, were beheaded. So they decided to surrender. Okay, this is the life of Muhammad, page 464, section 690. Right, get the book. I am happy to provide all of these books to anyone who asks me. I've made that offer before. He sent for them and he struck off their heads in those trenches as they were brought out to him in batches. He sat there with his wife, Aisha, his 12-year-old wife at the time, and he sat there until that night, until about 10 p.m. that night. There were 600 or 700 in all. The some put the figure as high as 800 or 900. They were taken out in batches, okay? And then when Ka'b asked Muhammad, he replied, will you never understand? Don't you see that the summoner never stops? And those who are taken away do not return. By Allah, it is death. This went on until the apostle made an end of them. The apostle, obviously, is Muhammad. Okay, so Huyay, which is one of the Jews, was brought out wearing a flowered robe in which he had made holes the size of his fingertips so that no one could take it from him. Because the previous tribes of Jews, Muhammad had robbed them, had taken all their possessions, their properties, their houses, their money. And in fact, with this Jewish tribe, he burned a fire. It's called Kinana. The man was called Kinana. He burned a fire. He tied the man down on the ground and lit a fire on his chest so that this man would admit where he hid their gold. He tortured this man to death by burning a fire on his chest so that he would say where he gave their gold. He then married the same man's wife that night. And of course, yeah. So anyway, this guy says, I do not blame myself for opposing you, for he who forsakes God will be forsaken. Other translations give slightly different, say things a little differently. This is not the easiest translation, but it is the oldest, best known translation. This is the Guillaume translation, and it's the one that's best known. Okay, so going on, the children were adopted into Muslim families. Okay, he sat there with his 12-year-old wife, and they were raised as Muslims. The women were sold in wholesale lots into slavery. This was the Banu Qurayza massacre. Now, he learned from this, and he realized dead people don't give you money. So what he learned was he created a class of human called the dhimmi. And we did an entire episode on this as well in the previous 5 episodes. The dhimmi is a semi-slave who pays tribute. Half of your income for the year must be paid to Muhammad and the Muslims. Muhammad took 1/5 of all booty. Okay. Ishaq, this is the same book here. Ishaq 461. After the siege exhausted and terrorized them, example of Muhammad, terror is important. The Jews felt certain the apostle would not leave them until he had exterminated them. And he said, swear allegiance. It is clear as a prophet. Okay. So no compulsion, not true. Okay. So these are the references as I have you here. I offer you 3 alternatives. Okay. Okay, I discussed all this. You've seen all this already. So we've seen this. Now, this is a story that all Muslims are told. They learn this in the mosque. They all know this. We aren't told this, but this is what Muslims believe. This is what they're told. Don't forget, if I may say this bluntly, white people, Europeans, Americans, are all about guilt, are all about, oh my God, we did slavery. Show me a single Mongol, show me a single Muslim, show me a single any other race that apologizes for slavery, for their slavery. Show me any other race.
And you know, I've seen
Yeah.
people even accuse whites of bringing slavery to the Americas when Montezuma is recorded in the Florentine Codex, or no, in Diego Duran's book, of sacrificing 8,000 slaves at his coronation.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So, you know, yeah. No other race ever. They see this as strength. They see this as we were powerful. We was kangs. They don't see this as a crime, right? So, a
All the
dhimmi,
inversion. Yep.
yeah. So Muhammad created the dhimmi. So dhimmi existed in an Islamic world. So this is a non-Muslim subject of the Islamic State. Again, we did an entire episode in detail on this. I'm not going to go through all of that now. A Jew could only be Jewish in his own home or in the synagogue. All of the culture, the laws, and the politics was Islamic. So a dhimmi has to pay the tribute. Now, these are only a few. Again, I went into detail. It gets a lot worse than this. It's not as pleasant as people make out. A dhimmi had to pay the jizya, tribute. Half of everything they earned was paid to Islam and to Muhammad. The dhimmi also has to be humiliated. I'm going to go here for a second. Okay, I have covered this before. The purpose of paying the jizya is to humiliate. Okay, is to humiliate them. The honor of Islam lies in insulting the kafirs. One who respects the kafirs dishonors the Muslims. The intent is to humiliate them so that they may not dress well or live in grandeur. They should constantly be trembling. You must hold them under contempt and uphold the honor and the might of Islam. This is from a Sufi. The Sufis weren't as friendly as people think either. The dhimmi is derived from the Arabic root word that means blame. Okay, that means guilt or blame. Okay, so that is what the dhimmi. Okay, we covered this again in detail. Now, amongst the rules of the dhimmi, their houses may not be higher than the houses of Muslims. They may not ride an elegant horse or mule. Okay, they must hold their tongue, and they must wear an identifying patch. Okay?
Wait a second. Where have I heard that before?
Now guess who? Now guess who gave that information to the person where you heard that before from? Okay, don't forget. I will cover a little bit of that. We come into some of that. So modern Jewish hatred. So let me move on. So now let's move forward from Medina to modern times. There's a problem between Jews and Muslims today. It's known as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We have to note that it's the official position of the Israeli government that Islam, the religion, plays no part in the problem that Israel faces today. That's the official government position. I believe they are wrong. They are dead wrong, but that is their official position. So the Palestinians say, I support the Palestinian cause. I support jihad. There are hundreds. Geez, good grief. There's so many of those. Okay. Israelis claim that this is purely a modern political problem, but jihad is not a modern concept. Okay. So the Jews were likened to donkeys carrying books and were compared to apes and pigs in the Quran. Okay, a common statement, and if you read through any statements from that part of the world, the Israelis today are the descendants of apes and pigs. Okay, the Prophet Muhammad foretold that judgment day would come only when the Muslims fight the Jews, and the Muslims would kill the Jews, and the stones and the trees would say, servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. We're getting to that in detail. Okay, Allah willing, we will enter Israel as conquerors and liberators, not through negotiations, but through jihad. Now remember, jihad is the inner struggle about making yourself better, like having more salads and going to the gym. So through going to the gym and having more salads, you're going to conquer Israel. Right. Jihad is all about peace. Moving on. So
Well, before you move on there, I wanted to show that imam at the New Jersey Islamic Center. You mind if I show that on
here
screen?
it is. Yeah, I've just brought it up as well. It's right here.
Oh, all right. Excuse me.
No, sure. So these links I will show later, and but anyone can look this up on memory.org, memri.org. So I will
That
provide these
is
links.
shocking, too. I'm going to post the link in the chat here as well so
Okay,
people
thank you.
can watch that later.
So this is a discussion recorded secretly in a mosque, or was leaked from a mosque, and this is they say the Palestinian cause is entirely Islamic, but it must be marketed as humanitarian to gain popular support. It is a vehicle of propaganda. They say it is. Notice here this quote. It says it is. This is as a guy speaking. This cause is 100% Islamic and 0% humanitarian, because it is Islamic scripture that they have to take the land of Israel. They have to kill every single Jew. Okay, we're coming to all of that. But yeah, that'll teach you a lot about what Muslims actually believe versus what they say in public. So now, unfortunately, the story of the Jews as dhimmis and Christians as dhimmis is one of shame, one of humiliation. Now, unfortunately, we have the story, the myth of the golden age of Islam, especially as applied to Spain. Now, it is said that the high point of civilization was found in Islamic Spain, which is a lie. I have, but that's a very long historical conversation. It was a culture of tolerance and great intellectual striving. Now, there's a little bit of truth to this, maybe, because they captured all of these people that were already advanced, and these slaves worked for them. Okay. Um, Now, in Spain, there were a handful of Jews and Christians as some of the Islamic rulers relaxed some of the laws against the dhimmis and against the kafir. These people were then allowed to rise through the ranks, although it was against the Sharia. Now, what happened in Spain is very, very few prospered. But what happened was, in one example, a Jew became a prominent advisor to the caliph in Spain. And when he died, okay, his son took over, and his son decided to enforce the laws. He was a hardliner. So it doesn't mean that that isn't in the law. It just means that they weren't enforcing the law to the full degree. And what happened is then that this man was killed, and 4,000 other Jews in Grenada were killed by the Muslims to put them back in their place. And that's not the only occasion. Now, can a golden age exist if it is based upon the dhimmitude of Kafirs, right? If there is this enforced slavery, can it be a golden age? Can it be a golden age when Europeans fought for 700 years to drive Islam out of Spain? Is that a golden age? Can a Jewish scholar call this history a golden age when 4,000 Jews were killed in one day, were executed in a single day? Is that a golden age?
Now it's starting to look more and more, and like I said, we're going to go into this in the next installment, but it's looking more and more like everything is a bait and switch, and I mean, what a perfect cover. You have this memory page on the other side at the New Jersey Islamic Center, and they even explain how they hide all of their stuff and humanitarian needs and all of this stuff. And then you have all of this oil money from Saudi Arabia pouring out to, as you said, the Saudi Arabia pays 3 times what the Soviet Union did for propaganda.
Yes, their propaganda budget is 3 times that of the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War. Where's that money going?
Yeah, and it looks like it's going into propaganda to invert things, as crazy as that sounds. I know, everybody's used to only looking at Israel and Zionism as the problem, but what if there is another angle here that is being overlooked? The red herring, look over there and not at the problem right in front of you. And it seems to me that this is a diversion tactic. It's not to say that, that some Jews were involved in MK Ultra and that stuff. I mean, my research has well proved that. But what we're seeing here is a very, in my opinion, blatant bait and switch.
Right. Okay, so I'm about to conclude the narrative section of it, the historical narrative, and then I'll go into the scriptural stuff in the next slide. But so the only claim, the full substance of the claim of Muslims over Jerusalem is that Muhammad had a dream in which he went from Mecca to Jerusalem. Although the word, if anyone can show me the word Jerusalem in the Quran, I'd love to see it. Please send me the page it's on. Send me the quote, the passage, the chapter, the verse. Because to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but Jerusalem is not mentioned anywhere in the Quran. Right? I could be wrong, but yeah. So let's talk about the night journey. Okay, the Al-Miraj. This is a flight where Muhammad got on a bright shining winged camel or horse or something. Okay, and went to heaven. But he first went to Jerusalem, to the mosque in Jerusalem, tied his horse there, where the prophets previously would tie their flying horses, and then he went up. Sorry, that was unintentional. So now this flight, this mirage, determines the Islamic rituals of the praying 5 times a day and the ablutions. Okay, so this night journey impacts all of the Muslims across the world. 5 times a day, each and every day, if they are praying those times. The story can be found in Sahih Bukhari, volume 5, book 58, number 227. That's hadith number 227. Notice though, before we get there, so it's quite lengthy, but you can look it up, Sahih Bukhari 5, 58, 227. The inscription on the Dome of the Rock, let's just briefly talk about that. On the Dome of the Rock, that mosque on the top there, it says, O people of the book, do not exaggerate in your religion, nor utter aught concerning God save the truth. That's the Islamic truth. The Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, was only a messenger of God, not his son, and his word which he conveyed unto Mary, and a spirit from him. So believe in God and his messengers, and say not 3, the Trinity, cease. It is better for you, a threat. God is only one God, Tawhid, which is the Islamic conception of God. Far be it removed from his transcendent majesty that he should have a son. That is inscribed on the Dome of the Rock. Okay, and this is obviously proof that we worship the same God, because they're saying don't do it, or, well, you know. So again, something you can quote to people when they tell you we worship the same God in Christianity and Islam and in Judaism. So Surah 17:1 in the Quran, glory to Allah who did take his servant for a journey by night from the sacred mosque, the Kaaba in Mecca, to the furthest mosque. Notice the reference here only says the furthest mosque. Now, Muhammad died in the year 632. The mosque was built in 691 in Jerusalem. So Muhammad not only was a great prophet, he was also a time traveler. So how did he go to Jerusalem when there was no mosque in Jerusalem at the time? So all it says is the furthest mosque, which is Al-Aqsa. Okay, that is the word used in the Quran. Much later, when the mosque was built, it was called the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And that is why people say, well, then he obviously went to that mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Well, that mosque wasn't there until 59 years after Muhammad's death. Right? That mosque didn't get there until 59 years or 60 years after Muhammad's death. So how could he have gone there? And, you know, and not only that, the distance is 766 miles. 766 miles. How did this Arab from the 7th century do 766 miles in one night and come back?
On a flying camel.
On a flying camel. Yeah. Okay. Sahih Muslim, book 1, number 309. Okay. So blah, blah, blah. I mounted it and came to the temple in Jerusalem. Remember, this is added. This is assumed. This is not actually specifically said anywhere in the Quran. Then tethered it to the ring used by the prophets. I entered the mosque and prayed, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So he goes on. He goes to the Dome of the Rock, Temple Mount. Okay. So now they say that he literally went. So there's this whole confusion, this whole debate about he went literally versus no, he went in spirit. God took his spirit and he went in a dream, right? He went spiritually. No, he went bodily. So there's this whole discussion around that. Okay. So anyway, so people claim that Muhammad described it correctly. I don't know how he described the mosque that did not exist until 60 years after his death. I don't know. Please explain in the comments. So now, also the temple, okay, Muhammad described the temple which had been torn down 500 years before he was born, okay? So Muhammad is describing things that are not there anymore and things that aren't there yet. Now, the Caliph Omar, okay, marched into Jerusalem in 639, okay? So that's when the first invasion of Jerusalem happened by the Muslims, when they invaded Israel, okay? So just to save time, let me skip forward a little bit. Okay, now questions. What temple on the mount did Muhammad visit before ascending to heaven if the temple had been torn down 500 years previously? Okay, seeing that the Quran mentions a journey to a mosque that did not exist during the life of Muhammad, how can the Quran then be 100% the word of God? Okay, if the Quran and the Islamic traditions contain a historical error, how can we trust the source? And also, we got to ask ourselves, who added stories to the Quranic text and passed them off as revelation from God? If we know that these are historically inaccurate stories, okay? And the Quran claims to be 100% true. A single error would invalidate the Quran. Well, we can find plenty if we take the time to look, but those are questions that one has to ask. Now, a couple of issues, okay? They claim he went to heaven in one night, but then if we look here, in the life of Muhammad, that's the same book we were referencing earlier here. I just screen capped this, page 184, section 267. The apostle went on no night journey except while he was in my house. Okay, he slept that night in my house. He prayed the night prayer, then we all slept. A little before dawn, he woke us. That is someone who says the apostle slept in her house that night, and that contradicts his story. Next, Muhammad's wife, Aisha, that's okay. Did the Prophet Muhammad see his Lord? And she says, whoever tells you that Muhammad saw his Lord is a liar. Okay, that is Bukhari, the Hadith of Bukhari, volume 6, book 60, Hadith number 378. Then Aisha again.
His own wife.
His own wife. Aisha, the Prophet's wife, used to say the apostle's body remained where it was, but God removed his spirit by night. Okay, and here's a clip again, and then it's also in Ibn Ishaq in Sirat Rasulullah. That's this book on the right here. The apostle remained where he was, but God removed his spirit by night. Now in the Tafsir, they talk about he went literally, but his wife says no, that's not true. And someone else also said this is not every single reference that is available. It's just a selection of them, but it's just enough for me to get the point across. Any questions so far before I go to the next section and start finishing up here?
No, go ahead. I don't see any questions in the chat. If anybody has any questions, throw up a super chat. We'll try to get to them here.
Okay,
we're getting
but
close to the end.
That Muhammad got on a winged horse and went to the mosque in Jerusalem that wasn't there is literally the entirety. That is the full substance of the claim that Muslims have over Jerusalem. That is it. There is nothing more. So I had a dream. I went to a house. A guy called Jan Irvin lived there. That's on number 22 Rose Street in blah, 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 Wisconsin. And you're in my house, Jan. Give me my house. I want my house. I had a dream about it. That's my house. You understand? That makes perfect sense, right? Okay. Historical point. So in 1925, this book was published, the Al-Haram Al-Sharif, okay? A brief guide to the Al-Haram Al-Sharif, Jerusalem. This was published by the Supreme Muslim Council of Jerusalem in 1925. The SMC was headed by the Nazi ally and friend of Hitler who happened to be staying with him, Imam al-Husseini, who raised troops to support Hitler's army. Okay, he raised army troops to support Hitler's war effort. He was the guy that gave Muhammad the idea of, hey, how about we make the Jews wear a symbol? Because that is already established in Islamic law. And apparently he was very instrumental in Muhammad's plans and ideas for the Jews. He also told Hitler, from what we know, again, controversial, so I'll just mention there are multiple different viewpoints, but I'll mention this because it's relevant to the discussion, that Hitler wanted to move the Jews to Madagascar at one point, but he couldn't because that was owned by the French. Then he thought, okay, well, let's send them back to Palestine, back to the ancient homelands. And this guy said, we don't want them, kill them. Okay. So anyway, what is relevant here, though, is that there's a quote in this book that says, the site is one of the oldest in the world. Its sanctity dates from the earliest, from perhaps prehistoric times. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. This too is the spot, according to universal belief, on which David built there an altar unto the Lord and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. This is a scan of the book, and this is the section right here. Its identity with the site of Solomon's temple is beyond dispute. I will send anyone a copy of this if you want it. Okay. Notice, though, that Caliph Omar occupied Jerusalem in 637. This is the place where Muhammad apparently was miraculously translated. Now, Muhammad didn't do any miracles. He said that. Okay. But anyway, that is just a 1925 version of this book. It's not around anymore. That says this is unquestionably linked to Jewish history. Okay. So now I will go here. Final section. Any questions or comments? Anything interesting in the comments? Yeah.
Not really. No. Let's see.
Sure. No one's saying anything
Somebody
interesting.
is asking how about the history of Andalusian Spain.
Oh yeah. Look, I have a couple. I bought some material. I actually bought books on that. It's a lie. The story of the myth of the whole Andalusian paradise, that is a myth. If you read the primary sources, if you go back to the ancient scholars of Islam who lived there, and you read through the actual historical sources that they themselves wrote, you realize it was horrific. It was a violent, brutal place. It's entirely a myth. They enforced Sharia law, so people lived as dhimmis. I covered that in a previous episode, the whole dhimmitude, the status. It's nothing like people make out, not when you read the original sources. Okay, so to finish the last section.
Just really quickly, Yin Yang is asking if there is a good Quran audio book they can listen. Well, good, air quotes there. Audio book, and they're saying they're going through the KJV, which is superb, which is obviously when you get that it's all about Logos and truth, it's mind-blowing. Yep.
But I've never used the Quran audio version, to be honest. I go to Quran X. Generally speaking, the site I use the most is QURANX.com, Quran X. They have 16 different versions of the Quran, so I can compare multiple versions simultaneously.
And if there's one single error, it's wrong. So I'm surprised that they would allow 16. You know, obviously the English Bible has dozens of translations, which gets ridiculous.
All of the other language translations of the Quran are not actually translations of the Quran. They are translations of the commentaries on the Quran, because the Quran itself is apparently almost unintelligible. Apparently 20% of the Quran, 1/5, roughly every fifth sentence, is garbled. Makes no sense. So people are struggling to translate the Quran itself, so therefore they translate the commentaries on the Quran. So that's something I was told. I don't know how true that is, but so Jews. Now, the Meccan Quran has 1% Jew hatred. Okay, the Medinan Quran, that's when Muhammad fled to Medina, became a refugee, and the Islamic calendar started. The Hijrah, that's another form of jihad, immigration, has 17% Jew hatred. The Sira, the biography of Muhammad, has 12% Jew hatred. Okay, of the textual content is negative about the Jews or hateful towards the Jews. The Hadiths, 9%. The total of all the books of Islam is 9% Jew hatred. Mein Kampf, Hitler's book, is only 7% Jew hatred.
And everybody says focus on Mein Kampf and the Germans, all Europeans take a rap for that for the next 70, 75 years, or who knows how much longer. And we ignore Islam.
Yeah, correct. Look, I'm not trying to let Hitler off the hook whatsoever. Okay, I'm not. It's just that I'm just doing a factual comparison here. So now these are statements: no negotiating, total destruction of the children of Israel. That's Mahmoud al-Habash, okay, the PA's most important religious figure. Okay, he said the conflict between Palestinians and Israelis is not a political conflict, but a battle between Islam and the culture of Satan. Okay, that they view it as a religious conflict. Okay, for them that's a religious war. Al-Ghazali, let's skip this because I don't want to spend the whole, oh my gosh, it's 24 after 2 already.
Okay.
Sorry, so let me do this section. We can always maybe pick this up again in the future, Jan. The Quran depicts the Jews as inveterately evil and bent on destroying the well-being of Muslims. For instance, I'll give you a small sample of the things the Quran says about the Jews. They're the strongest of all people in hatred towards the Muslims. That's 582. They fabricate things, they lie, and they falsely ascribe things to Allah. 279, 375, and 3181. They claim that Allah's power is limited. That's a sin, punishable by death. 564. They love to listen to lies. That's 541. They disobey Allah and never observe His commands. 513. They're disputing and quarreling people. 247. They hide the truth and they mislead people. 378. They stage rebellions against the prophets and they reject the guidance of the prophets. That's Muhammad in this case. 255. They are hypocrites. 214 and 244. They give preference to their own interests over the teachings of Muhammad. Their sin was not listening to Muhammad. That's 287. They wish evil for people and they try to mislead people. That's 2109. They feel pain when others are happy or unfortunate. That's 3120.
Wow.
They're arrogant about their being Allah's beloved people. 518. They devour people's wealth by subterfuge. 4161. They slander the true religion. That's Islam. And are cursed by Allah. 446. They killed all the prophets. 261. They are merciless and heartless. 274. They never keep their promises or fulfill their words. 2100. They are unrestrained in committing sins. 579. They are cowardly. 59, 13 to 14. They are miserly. 453. And they were transformed into apes and pigs. And in other passages, they transformed into lizards. They transformed into snakes. They whatever, for breaking the Sabbath. There's a whole bunch of references at 263 to 65, 559. They are under Allah's curse, 930, and Muslims must wage war against them, 929. And they also fabricated their own book. Woe to those who write the book with their own hands and then say, this is from Allah. Okay. So that's Quran 279. They made up their books because they wouldn't listen to Muhammad, then they became liars. Okay. So we spoke about previously that in the death of Muhammad, he was killed by a Jewish woman because he had slaughtered her tribe. He'd slaughtered her uncles, her brothers, her husband in front of her. Then he married her that night, right? The same night that he slaughtered her family in front of her. And she obviously cooked him the meal that poisoned him to death, right? That is, so, oh man, there's so much more content. So I don't think, I don't want to spend, would be another half hour if I have to go through this. So you can see this content that I have. Can we maybe pick this up another time and we can just discuss a few things about what I've said so far? But let me
so
do.
you want to do a part 2 to this, and
we may need to. It's a brief, but okay. A couple of things. People don't talk about Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. These are news links. Look at the screen. You can follow these later. Arbitrary arrests and torture systematic. The systematic practice of torture by Palestinian authorities amount to a crime against humanity prosecutable at the International Criminal Court.
If you would rather just do a part 2 to this and then we put off the Talmud one more episode, is that what you'd prefer to do?
Cool, yeah. Just to mention though, but why aren't people looking? This is a 23 October 2018 report. It's a 6-month-old report, a 5-month-old report about the atrocities. Gaza, Palestinians are tortured and summarily killed by Hamas. Okay, Imam, jihad in Palestine is the most obvious jihad on the face of the earth. Okay, it is our religious duty to fight the Jews and to kill them. Okay, so let me read a couple of things, before we go.
And we haven't even gotten to really what the what the Talmud says, or even comparing it to what the Jews say about the Goyim.
Yeah. So, for instance, it is. If we look at, the apostle said, this is in Sira Rasulullah, that's this book on the right here, page 369. The apostle said, kill any Jew that falls into your power. Thereupon, Wahisa Masud leapt upon Ibn Sunayna, a Jewish merchant with whom they had social and business relations, and killed him. Okay, he then goes on to say, his brother says, why would you do that? And he says, if Muhammad had told me to kill you, I would have done so too, my brother. Right, so this is the law, because this is Muhammad's word. Abu Hurairah reported Allah's messenger as saying, the last hour would not come until the Muslims fight against the Jews and the Muslims would kill them. The Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree, and a stone or a tree would say, Muslim or the servant of Allah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him. But the tree Garka, the box thorn, would not say it, for it is the tree of the Jews. Sahih Muslim, book 41, hadith 6985. You, the Jews, should know that the earth belongs to Allah and his apostle, and I wish to expel you from this land, Arabia, which he did. Within 5 years of Muhammad's death, there was not a single Jew in all of Arabia, not a single Christian either. Umar heard the messenger of Allah say, I will expel the Jews and the Christians from Arabia, and I will not leave any but Muslims. That's in Sahih Muslim 4363 and 4366. Okay. Allah said, a prophet must slaughter before collecting captives. A slaughtered enemy is driven from the land. Muhammad, you crave the desires of this world, its goods and the ransom captives would bring. But Allah desires killing them to manifest the religion. That is in 484. That's in Muhammad's biography. So that is just some of the content of what the Quran and the Islamic books have to say about the Jews in Islam.
All right, well, we'll have to add one more episode to this series and then wait to do the Talmud in part 8.
Yeah. So also Allah, as we know, is a Zionist, and he gave Israel to the Jews until the day of judgment. Because Israel is mentioned 44 times in the Quran, Palestine is not mentioned once. Couple of things. Al-Baqarah 247, O children of Israel, call to mind the special favor for which I bestowed upon you, and I preferred you above the whole world. That's Allah saying that. O children of Israel, okay? Into the holy land which Allah hath assigned unto you, and turn not back. Okay, so inheritors of the lands in both east and west is the promised land of the Israelites on both sides of the river Jordan. Okay, so we took the children of Israel with safety across the sea. We settled the children of Israel in a beautiful dwelling place and provided for them the sustenance of the best. Quran 7138, 1093, 7137. Look these up. I mean, that's just a handful. O children of Israel, we deliver you from the enemy. We made a covenant with you on the side of Mount Sinai. We sent you down manna and quails. So Allah seems to be very favorable of the Jews too. But whatever, the Quran's full of contradictions. So yeah, I'll have to call it there. I don't want to spend the whole night, but any comments or thoughts on this issue?
I don't see any good questions right now at the moment.
But how do you think this information changes the picture of, what a kafir is versus, let's say, the goy? Because I would love to see.
We need to flush it out some more, obviously. But yeah, it's starting to paint a very different picture than what we're told.
Yeah.
It's extremely disturbing and, material. And meanwhile, we're told it's the religion of peace and yada yada. But clearly, that's very disingenuous at best, and at worst, a flat-out lie to cover up a very serious agenda. And it's starting to look more and more like an agenda to spin everything and point another direction. I mean, for instance, in just about all of my shows in the chat, you can read people saying Jews this, Jews that, Zionism, etc. And then, nobody brings up this stuff in Islam and what's going on, and, or rarely, I should say, and the people invading Europe, etc. right now, and all of that going on. And it's constantly look over there at the Jews, and we're told that Islam is not a problem. And meanwhile, we can see if, the seriousness of this, and if this is all true, and we're sitting here looking over at Israel and Zionism, and this is sneaking in the back door, wow, what a dangerous situation that we are all in. I mean, talk about asleep at the wheel, talk about the worst red herring you could possibly imagine. And by the time people wake up and realize this, it'll be too late, and all we can do is put out, a series of shows to try to warn people, hey, look, stop looking over there and at least look at both, observe both situations, and decide based on the facts which one is a more serious threat. Is it the 16 million Jews, or is it the 1+ billion Muslim or Islamists, and especially the extremists that are coming into Europe, putting in Sharia law, incrementally doing all of this stuff, and we see it now starting to creep into the U.S. as well. And how far does it go? And then we have to start questioning, where is the money trail, and does it lead to the House of Saud, you know?
Correct. Well, you've also got the Deobandis in Pakistan. You've got the Qataris. They're funding as well. I mean, remember, Saudi alone, 3 times the funding that the communists put in, right? And don't forget Qatar. Don't forget there's other countries. I mean, President Trump cut off the funding to the 3 billion a year that was going to Pakistan. What was Pakistan was doing what with that money? Ask yourself. You know, because their movement, their Deobandi Islam is spreading, and they were using that money for that purpose. In the U.S. government, you've now got Rashida Tlaib and you've Talib, more basically, and you've got Ilhan Omar. Both of them claim to be Palestinian. Now that they say, well, what about people with dual loyalties, dual nationalities? You know, implicitly Israelis, right? You know, American Israelis. But don't forget, as a Muslim, you are. It is compulsory that you are part of the Ummah, the Muslim community, and also they both claim to be Palestinians or supportive of Palestinians. And Rashida Tlaib also said, "I'm a Palestinian." She didn't say she's an American. You know, I mean, we saw that some of the things that they said once they were elected. So you've got to ask yourself, and also they were sworn in on the Quran, right? And they both are Sharia proponents. So, you know, what we've discussed in the last 5 episodes, and now the sixth on the Sharia is not compatible with Western values, Western democracy, Western law. It is a
Freedom,
violation of
not
everything.
not you know, not beating women. I mean, all of this is in Ephesians and First Corinthians, etc. How to treat women, how to treat your children, how to treat your neighbors, and you know, love your neighbor. And obviously, this is all the antithesis to that. It's completely inverted, upside down. You know, there's one person that thinks that all of the Abrahamic religions are the same, and statements like that come from being ignorant of the text. And we did a side-by-side comparison in episode number 5, comparing Christianity to Islam and showing the vast differences between the two. And it's once people grasp that the God of Christianity is truth or logos and honor, it totally changes the perspective of what Christianity is. Whereas in Islam, it's halal and whatever Muhammad says, and that's very different. And when we see the side-by-side comparison, where Muhammad is a psychopath laying the rules, it's very different. And now he's got his pet theory. What about Francis Bacon writing the Bible and blah, blah, blah?
I don't care.
He's just going off into la la land.
Doesn't matter who wrote
What he
Mickey
needs to
Mouse
do
could
is
have
sit
written.
down and read it for himself and stop regurgitating every pet theory that somebody's fed him.
Look, you know what? Mickey Mouse could have written the Quran in 1938 for all it matters. Really, that Bigfoot could have written it, right? The fact is, today, that is what people believe. That is what they follow. Doesn't matter when it was done, doesn't matter who did it. This is what is believed and followed today, right? That's a distraction. Okay, can I just go through the comments and maybe take 1 or 2 questions? People are asking about...
If anybody wants to throw up any super chats to help support the show and get
please
your
support
questions
Jan, much
first.
appreciated. I appreciate the platform he's given me, and I think this is valuable that people learn these things. And look, also in reference to that previous comment, what do you do when evidence butts up against belief?
Most people ignore the evidence and just go right back to pretending that they, have studied things thoroughly and read it themselves, repeating, stuff about Francis Bacon or whatever, theory they've had. It's just...
Doesn't matter. That's what people believe today. So has there been any John Cruzy? Has there been any for reformations within Islam? So the first reformation happened around the year 1111. You had a fight between the Mutazilites and Al-Ghazali, who was a hardline reformer. The Mutazilites wanted to change to become more Greek/Christian. They were murdered by the other side, the hardliners. They were killed. And now Islam then went into serious decline after 1683 Battle of Vienna. Poland's King Jan Sobieski destroyed the Turkish army, the largest army to ever invade Europe, over 200,000 men, almost 300,000 people, 225,000 fighting men. His 80,000 man army, he smashed them. He was a brilliant leader, smashed their army. They went into massive decline. until the 1930s, 40s, 50s, when oil was discovered in Saudi, and those billions of petrodollars have led to a new reformation within Islam. Now, reformation means that you go back to the beginning, you go back to the founder. So, what we're seeing, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, these are all attempts to get back to the roots of Islam, to go back to the founder, to go back to the way of Muhammad. So, yes, we are seeing the Reformation, and that is the hardline Islam you're seeing today. That is the Reformation. Okay, so let's see what are the questions. If there's anything else up here that I can question or comment. I'll start at the bottom. I'm only asking you to sit down and read the New Testament or whatever. All the migrants. Okay, migration is a form of jihad. It is Islamic. The Islamic calendar, the year zero, is when Muhammad left Medina, became a refugee, and went to Mecca. Sorry, Mecca went to Medina.
I'm going to show this video for people on screen again that they need to go watch at the New Jersey Center there. I'm just showing that. Yeah. And that'll give them a clue, you know, and there's the address, but I'll post that in the chat again so that people can watch that immediately after this, because they really need to figure this stuff out. You know, what they don't get is that Christianity literally built the Western civilization that they destroy, or that they enjoy, while Islam will completely, utterly annihilate it.
Yeah, it will. I mean, that's what it does. But jihad is, so immigration is a form of jihad. If you die in the attempt to migrate, you will earn all the rewards of heaven like any jihadi, because that's your intention, is to spread Islam by migrating. Let's see, I'm not, okay, so let's see, what about Francis Bacon? I don't care. Who's letting all the migrants in? Well, look, they're coming in. I mean, so who controls people? Look, sure, I mean, so, and who controls the people who control the people, and who controls the people who control the people who control, whatever, they're coming in, do something about it, right? So
if you sit there, who controls the people who controls the people, and sit there blaming, and look, the problem is at your back door. Stop going, well, what about this, Rothschild guy? I mean, focus on the immediate problem and stop looking for the damn scapegoat.
That's
all they're doing is
do what you can.
All they're doing is looking for a scapegoat. Sure, the war in Syria caused this influx of people, whatever. Stop the problem. And when you get what the texts say, if you stop living in iniquity and stop daydreaming, you would be prepared for all of this crap.
So let me give you a mission. Look, something becomes mainstream belief in any culture if 10% of the people in that culture know it. So all you got to do is inform 10% of the people in your country. And when it's mainstream, there will be pushback, because enough people know it to kick up a fuss and make political change. 10%. I've heard that Allah, yin yang, I've heard that Allah is Lucifer in disguise. Baal, is that true? So Allah is, okay, Muhammad's father was called Abdullah. So before Muhammad was born, we had the slave of Allah. So Allah was obviously around before Muhammad was born. They were born in, so I discussed this at length in the previous episode, but Allah basically was the God of kings his name was Hubal, right? That was the Nabatean God of kings, which lends some credence to the idea that Islam was founded in Petra, right? There's lots of archaeological evidence and other evidence that leads one to in that direction. But yeah, Hubal. So yes, Baal, there is a connection. Is Baal Lucifer? No, I don't think so. Jan might know more than me, but certainly Allah has been around. And also that God had a wife, Alat, and he had two daughters, Al-Manat and Al-Uzza. So yeah. Islamic contribution to philosophy that don't forget, they captured and enslaved thousands of scholars, John Crucy. So all of North Africa was part of the Roman Empire, was Christian. All of Eastern Europe, all of Turkey was Christian. When the Muslims invaded, those people couldn't leave, they were captured. And therefore, they obviously had access to all of these scholars. So that's where that philosophy comes from. That's where all that learning comes from. Because they had these people under their control as slaves and as prisoners. The Greeks took their philosophy. The Greek took their philosophy from the Egyptians. Well, the early Egyptians were a Greek-Persian hybrid. They were white people. They were not the Greeks of today. The Egyptians of today are not the Egyptians of 5,000 years ago, are not the Egyptians of 3,000 years
Right,
ago.
and you and I talked a couple weeks ago about how large swaths of Africa were probably white at one time as well, and
Yes.
those were all
Yeah.
wiped out. So, you know,
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I'm just trying to find. I can't see everything, but um, so yeah, look, guys, this just to research and write. You saw how much notes I have here. This took me about 7 hours to put together. It takes me between 5 and 6 hours to put together one of these talks. I have to spend most of a day. I have to spend researching, typing all this crap up. I mean, it doesn't fall on the page by itself. I've got to go do the research, find the notes. So it's a lot of work. Um,
and
so
send
yeah,
send Lloyd some donations too, so that he can support himself in Poland. Please throw up some super chats, send some donations through the Logos Media website. We really appreciate the support. We
yeah. If you
have
guys want
to.
to support me,
I will be moving this coming week, so again, I'm not sure if I'll be able to do the show next Tuesday or not. But I appreciate any and all love and support thrown this way. Here's the
yeah,
website donation page, and in the chat there, and it's also down at in the show
yeah,
description. But so we'll try to get part 7 now done as soon as possible, and I'll try to get the image fixed as soon as I can about Islam
the
versus the
Jews.
Jews and not
Yeah.
Jew. I think I quoted you on that. So, but
The Jews. I think I wrote Jews, but you just missed an S. Yeah,
okay,
guys, please support Jan. I appreciate that he's given me this opportunity to discuss this very controversial topic. Not a lot of people are brave enough to tackle this subject. And the fact that he decided to do this is a testament to a very courageous decision and someone who's willing to
likewise for you.
investigate the truth. And yeah, please do support him. Please do provide him donations. And look, if any of you'd like to support me, I mean, I do appreciate it. My PayPal is ldejong_pl at outlook.com if you'd like to. But do think about Jan. John Crucia, thank you. That's a nice comment there. So yeah, I've answered a few questions. I've tried to give as much detail and as possible. For some of the information I've referenced, they are in the previous episodes, which have hundreds of detailed citations. The notes are on screen. Anyone can look at them, copy paste.
And
Um,
it's like, what, 3-4 a.m. for you, so you need to get
yeah.
going and get some sleep.
Last question: is secularization of Islam possible compared with hardline? Well, jihad is the core doctrine of Islam. The last verse, the last chapter of the Quran is chapter 9, because the Quran is not ordered chronologically; it's ordered by length of chapter. So everything's mixed up in there. So the last chapter was 9:29 and 9:30, which says, "Go forth and fight non-Muslims, establish Islam and Sharia, capture them, kill them, enforce Islam on the world." That is what the last chapter is about. If you read chapter 9, it is violent. So secularization, no, because to deviate is to commit a crime of bid'ah. Innovation is not allowed. It is also blasphemy. It would be to become an apostate, to not follow Muhammad, and not follow Allah. Because you have to follow Allah, you have to follow the word of Muhammad. So secularization of Islam is not possible. If you take Muhammad out of the Quran, you only have 16% of the Quran left, because Allah is a very tiny portion of Islam, really tiny portion. It's mostly about Muhammad.
All right. Any
Okay.
other questions you want to answer there?
I don't know. So I don't know what this Jack Frost going on about. Jack, I don't
Oh,
know.
he's just
Whatever.
frustrated. He'll start reading the New Testament and start piecing it together on his own, but he needs to sit down and read about 420 pages of New
Yeah.
Testament first
Yeah,
before
I
he
wish
starts
people
getting
would
it.
stop telling me, oh, but Leviticus, look, man, first of all, even in Israel, they don't stone people to death. You know what? Islam,
Right, and they confuse the Old Testament with the
the
New
New
Testament.
Testament.
The New Testament is Christianity for most of you, or for those of
Yeah.
you who don't know.
Now, notice in Islam, you have the Sharia, which has a stoning for adultery. Judaism also has stoning for adultery. Guess in which part of the world they still stone women to death? Guess.
Today,
And it's not in Israel, I'll tell you that. Guess where they still cut off people's heads and hands and feet? And it's not in Israel, I'll tell you that. So you can say that, yes, but that's in the Bible. You know what? Guess what? In New York and Oxford and London and Paris and Madrid, they aren't killing people
right.
Old Testament way.
And
Guess
that's
where
the
they're doing
Old Covenant, the Old Testament. That's what the word testament
exactly.
means. It means covenant. So when you get the
So
difference between the old and the new covenants, the old covenant was Judaism, the new covenant is Christianity. Read the New Testament first or the new covenant, then go back and read the old covenant, and then you'll see how it fits together and why the changes happen. And I've been trying to explain this on the show for the last
yeah,
year and a half. So, but
notice,
Jack, just saying this really quickly,
yeah,
you'll get it. Just sit down and read it on your own. Study it.
yeah,
I use eSword software, and I have like 20 different Bibles. But look up what the words mean as you go through it. Look it up in Strong's Concordance and get an understanding of it. Understand
yeah,
what the word or logos is, and you'll get it. When you grasp that it's all about living in truth and honor, it'll all hit you.
yeah. No, so look, I mean, Islam has not changed. It cannot change because I've perfected this day. I've perfected your religion for you. That's Allah's word. You cannot change it. Also, Muhammad's example stands for eternity. How do you reform the biography of a dead man? How do you make him do different things after he's dead? You can't, right? Whereas if you look at Christianity has changed, Judaism has changed. They don't live according to those old covenants anymore. No one is being stoned to death in Paris
We just lost you for a minute. Where'd you go?
in the West.
You cut out there for a second.
So,
There's
Jan,
nobody stoning in the West. You cut out for a second. You hear me now?
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, you cut out there for a second. Go ahead and repeat that. We managed to go for over an hour without you cutting out.
Sorry, I know. For instance, Islam cannot be reformed because Allah says so. It's the Sharia, it cannot be reformed. There are penalties of death for doing so. You cannot reform Muhammad's example. He's dead. You can't change his example. Whereas Christianity has reformed, Judaism has reformed. We don't stone people to death. They still do in Islam. We don't
Well,
behead
and
people.
Christianity is the Reformation of the Old Testament, so it doesn't have stoning to death. When people say all that stuff in the Bible, they're confusing the Old Testament with the New Testament. You have to understand the
That's
difference.
probably deliberate because they want to create shame. They want to embarrass you.
Right,
They want to
and
make
Christianity did this. I had somebody tell me last week, well, the Christians murdered these people, and actually, if they're doing that kind of stuff, that's not how Christianity works, unless the people were, it can be done in defense in Christianity, but they're not going around murdering people and capturing 250 million slaves and whatnot. So
yeah.
it's like John says, logos is the most important concept in the Bible, and then Good Mackie says truth is everything, and that's correct. And understanding things in context and not taking things completely out of context, like so many people do regarding different topics.
Well, I've provided citations. I've had people tell me about the Talmud and not provide not one citation in over a month.
Yeah.
Please. I've
And
provided
and
hundreds.
and let me just put this out there, and then we're going to wrap it up. Anybody who has primary citations regarding the claims about the Talmud, please send them to me at contact@logosmedia.com, and we'll include those in the next episode, or episode after next, in episode 8, when we cover the Talmud. So we'll get into that into great depth, and like I said at the beginning of this episode, I've gone into many of those citations with Lloyd. We were going over them, some of them together, and it's going to be an enlightening discussion. So until then, I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah, John Cruzy, Islam hasn't gotten more regressive. It's simply following the doctrine more closely. That's all it's doing.
Correct.
It's 100% the doctrine.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your support. What were you saying? What did you say, Lloyd?
No, that's it. I'm done. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Good night.